Hello, and welcome to this Google Analytics beginner training. In this training, I'm going to show you how to set up Google Analytics, how to set up different features in Google Analytics, for example, how to implement goals and event tracking. We're going to discuss about Ecommerce, and then we're also going to look at how to read and interpret the Google Analytics reports and how to get value out of them. Well, before we get started, there are a couple of websites I want to show you. The first one is analytics.google.com, where we're going to create our Google Analytics account and where all the work is being done. I would also want to recommend to you the developers.google.com/analytics website, which gives developer recommendations for Google Analytics, and it covers things such as how to implement the code on your website, how to implement different functionality for Google Analytics, and also some advanced features. And the last one is the Google Analytics support website at support.google.com/analytics. And here you can find this website in multiple languages, and you can use it to troubleshoot most of the Google Analytics issues that you might encounter. For example, things as how to implement the code, what to do if the code is not gathering data, the different products that you can link Google Analytics with, even how to create goals, events, and so on. It is a useful resource, and sometimes it really helps to find a quick solution to your issue. So let's switch back to the Google Analytics account. So the first thing you need to do if you don't have any account created is to go under admin, and here you can see under the account level a big plus button, create account. You press it. You need to give it a name, and this is the way it's going to appear in the Google Analytics interface. I always recommend giving it the name of your website where this code is going to be put at. That way it's going to be easy to see in the interface which code corresponds to which website. So let's say I want to put this on the website example.com. I'll just name it like this. Then you can decide if you want to leave these data sharing options checked on or not. For me, I'm okay, and I'm going to leave them checked on. Then you can press next, and you have the option to select where you want to use this Google Analytics code. So either it's going to be for website, for apps, or a new beta feature at the time I'm recording this video, which is in May 2020, of apps and web. I'm going to go with the first option of web. So this is going to be a code that is destined to be used on websites, and I'm going to press next. And then at the property setup, again, I'll just input the website name where I want to place this code on, example.com, and the website URL example.com, and the industry category, let's say this is in computers and electronics. The reporting time zone is important because this is the time zone in which your reports are going to be in. So for example, let's say you are sitting somewhere in London, you would want to change this here to United Kingdom, and then London is going to be the default time. GMT is going to be the default time, or you can go with United Kingdom time. So you can select these options. Again, if you're sitting in the US and so on, it's important to put the reporting time zone like this. One thing that I would want to mention here is for international websites, or maybe you're managing a website in another country, the reports are going to appear for the time zone you set in, but that might not always be ideal. For example, let's say I'm based in Europe and I'm managing a website that is getting mostly US traffic. Well, I'm going to see the reports in European time zone, whereas, and probably are going to get to see a lot of traffic happening at night when it's night in Europe, daytime in America. So in that case, I might want to create multiple views, and I'll show you how you can do that in this video, and then have one of the views reporting in a time zone where most of my users are, and another view reporting in the time zone of where I am located. I'm going to press create. Based on where you are located, terms and services are a bit different, so I would encourage you to select the correct location. And Of course, after you first read through them, you're going to have to accept them. This is something related to GDPR. And at the end, after you read them and accept them, the account gets created and you're automatically redirected to this page that gives you the Google Analytics code. This code now needs to be implemented on your website, and I have a full video on the channel that explains how to do that, so I'm not going to go through it again. But just to give you the main ideas, if you're using a website that is just built using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and so on, so let's call it a website that's being built manually, you'll have to copy all of this code on all the web pages of your website in the head tag. Google even says here in the description where you need to put it. So if you're just careful and read what's on this page, you're not going to have a problem with it. You're also going to find details on the Google Analytics developer website and on the Analytics Help Center. On the other hand, if you're using something like WordPress or Shopify or any of these CMS platform, content management system, they usually provide a specific part in the interface, in the settings where you can input your code, or sometimes you can add a plugin to it, to the CMS where you can put the code. For example, on WordPress, it's very common to add plugins for SEO, and almost all of them have a place where you can input your Google Analytics code. Now, another important thing I want to mention here is this part of that tells me that this is the Google site tag. And this is very important because Google Analytics every few years goes through different iteration, and the tracking code version and the way you do certain things need to change. For example, before the Google site tag, there was what used to be called Universal Analytics, and that had the analytics.js code. And that is very important because you need to know that when you're looking through articles on the Developer Center. For example, here you see on the web, when you select what measurement details you want, it gives you the option to look at the gtag.js options or analytics.js or the app plus the web properties. So in this case, since we're using gtag.js, I'm just going to click into that, and all of the features and measurement advice that it gives me are going to be specific for gtag.js. And here again, you can see the first article that it gives me is about how to add the G tag to your site, and it basically says the same thing. Just copy all of this code in the head section of your website. Just be careful if you're copying from here to change the GA measurement ID with the correct one that you get from your account. That's why it's just easiest and best to just copy from here and paste it on your website. Another really great way to install Google Analytics on your website, and indeed many other tags on your website, is by using a tag management system such as Google Tag Manager, and you're going to find on the channel a full video and also specific videos on more exact topics related to Google Tag Manager. Under the property, we can also do a variety of other settings, but I'm not going to go into that right now. I'm going to press a bit this back arrow here on the left hand side, and this is going to show me again the structure of Google Analytics. And Google Analytics is divided into 3 groups. The first is the account level, and generally I would recommend creating 1 account per each website. The limit that you have with a normal email address is to create up to 100 accounts. So if you're managing less than 100 websites, you should be fine with this. Then you have the property level, and at the property level you have different features that you can change and different settings that you can make, and we're going to go into a lot of them. And then the last one is the view level, and the view level is actually where you get to see your data, and this is where you do all of your work, all of your reporting, all of the different segmentation you might want to do to your data. So remember, I just mentioned earlier when we were creating the account that sometimes you might want to have a view in your own time zone. So for example, UK, and another one in the US time zone. Well, this is where you would do that. So I'm going to go a bit into my view settings here, and I can confirm that the time zone reporting for this view is United Kingdom. Of course, I can change it from here. But what I actually really want to do is create another view with the time zone reporting of US, because this website, let's say, gets most of the traffic from the US. So I'm going to create a new view. I'm going to give it the name US time zone. And you can name these anything you want, but I would recommend them naming them something intuitive, so that you make sure to easily be able to recognize each one of them what it is. And also, in case you give access to other people to work on your Google Analytics accounts, that it's easy for them as well to understand what account does what. So let's say that this is going to be United States, and then it gives me the different time zone in United States that I can choose from. Let's say I want to go with something more average, and I'm going to go with Chicago time. And it also tells me that I can create up to 25 views for each property. Views are very useful to filter different data in certain ways. So, but 25 is a pretty good limit. You will rarely bump against it. And then I'm going to create the view. Another important thing, I just mentioned a bit earlier, filters, and I'm also going to go later through this video on explaining a bit more to what filters are and what they do. But for now, it's important to know that filters, they permanently change and affect your data. And this is, let's say, a problem, because sometimes you might create a bad filter, and that's going to completely scrub the data in your view, or sometimes you might want to look at data without a filter as well. So that's why it's very common to create what it's called a raw view. So that would be a view in Google Analytics that you have absolutely no filtering to it ever, and where you can always get to see the raw data. And in case you ever screw up your working view, you always have that view to fall back to. So I'm going to create a new view here. I'm going to call it raw. And here I have the option to give it the reporting time zone that I want. For me, let's say I would want to have it in the United Kingdom time zone reporting. And then create view. And that's it. Now I have multiple views from here, and I can click on the drop down and select which one of them I want to see done. So this one is called raw, US time zone, and all view and all website data. This sounds a bit confusing. I'm just going to click on it, go to view settings, and I'm going to change its name to UK time zone, so that it is easy for me to know which one is what. And the last important thing that I want to mention right now here is that that one of the views has to be the default view that opens up automatically when you open this account up. And you can configure that under the property settings. You can select the default view here, and I'm okay with having the UK time zone as the default one. Okay. Now let's go and see some reporting. Because this analytics account was just created, and as you saw, I didn't put it on any website. It obviously doesn't have any data yet. So I have some accounts that I have access to, and we're going to open some of them up and look at the data. Before we do that, it is important when you create a website and you start using analytics to think a bit about what are the goals, what are the objectives that your website are about. For example, let's say you have an e-commerce store. Obviously, in that case, your main objective is to sell products. So it's easy to create a goal for selling products. And Google Analytics also gives you functionality for adding e-commerce functionality. So e-commerce functionality measurement. So that it gives you the option to measure and see some specific e-commerce reports. Another use case might be, for example, you have a blog and you're interested in how many people view how many pages on your website. So the number of articles that someone reads might be an important element for you. Or maybe you have some sort of a service website, or maybe a coach, or you do web development, and you want people to fill out a contact form and send it to you. These are all important actions to track on your website, and to do that and to easily see what's working and what's not working for you, Google Analytics has this functionality of goals. And I'm going to go later on to defining and showing you how to define some goals. But for now, just know that they exist and you can create some. And I have a video on the channel going really in depth into goals and everything you can do with them. But some of the reporting I'm going to be showing you, you're going to see some columns in them that are related to goals, some columns that are related to e-commerce, some columns that are related to events. So I just wanted to make you aware that these things exist, so that you don't get confused when you see them. So to navigate to another account, once I'm here, I have to go under the account level and press here on the drop down, and I'm going to select this demo account. And as you can see, it has multiple views. One of them is called master view, and this is the default view because this was the one that was selected. And here you can see a somewhat similar setup to what I showed you on the account. It has a raw data view, so this has no filtering applied. The master view is the one where you look at the data and so on. And a test view is also something that is really good practice to create. And when you want to try out a new filter, you first test it out and apply it to the test view. You make sure that nothing bad happens, it doesn't break your site. And if everything is okay, then you go on and apply that filter to the master view. And I'm gonna go later on to show you how to create filters as well. They're a bit more of an advanced topic, and you can very well go about using Google Analytics without ever creating a filter. Obviously, they're good to create, and I would recommend having them, but you don't necessarily always need them. So now to actually see some reports from the menu here on the left hand side of the page, I'm just going to select this one with a clock on it that says real time. And here I'm just going to press on the first report just to go into the reporting interface. And as you see here, there are many reports in the Google Analytics. The first set of reports are the real-time reports. And as the name suggests, they show real-time what's happening on the website right now. Then we have a set of reports called audience, and this basically tells us or answers the questions that we want to know about our audience. Things such as the demographics, so age and gender, what they're interested on, what location they're coming from, what type of device they're using to access the website, so on. Then we have the acquisition report, which tells us all about the different places that people came to our website. Did they come from an ad? Did they come from an email? Did they come from a post on social media? Did another website refer them to our website? Did they come following a Google search? Or did they directly type in their URL? And we're going to obviously have a good look into this. Behavior reports are about everything that people are doing on the website and about some of the way that the website itself is performing. And then last but not least are the conversion reports. And here you can see goals that we talked about, e-commerce reporting, multi-channel funnels. And then you also have here an attribution reports, but Google has moved those separately now. And attribution, it's a separate category on its own. And then you have a discover option and then the admin button. And when you press the admin, you go back to the settings interface where I just showed you how to do different things. And throughout this video, I'm going to be going back a few times to the admin interface to show you how you can set up different things in the reporting interface. But for now, let's go back to reporting. And on the real time, I'm going to select overview. And the overview is basically just what it says, an overview of the website. So right now on this website, there are 33 people active on the website. The main place where these people are coming to the website, they are coming as referrals. A referral in Google Analytics means a website that sends traffic to another website. So in this case, the analytics.google.com website sent 3 people to the website. There are no social traffic currently on the website, and the top keywords show as not provided. And not provided. I have a full video on just the not provided topic, but in a gist you see not provided either when someone comes from a non-search source. So for example, someone came to refer, like in this case, or when they come to organic search. For the past few years now, Google is not reporting the keywords on the organic search anymore, and they just appear as not provided. And then you have a top active pages report, and here you're gonna see where most people are on the website right now. And this is pretty common. You're gonna see people most of the time being on the home page, and that's probably gonna be for almost all websites the most visited web page. And then the top location where those people are coming to the website. So as you can see, we have someone here from Brazil, from Rio de Janeiro. We have a bunch of traffic coming in from India. We also have something from Africa. And we also have one user from Brisbane in Australia. And obviously, the bigger the website you're going to have, you're going to see a lot more active users right now. If you have a very visited website, it's not uncommon to have hundreds or thousands of users at the same time on your website. And then also this map is going to be full of dots everywhere. And congratulations for that. It means you have a very popular website and you should be proud of the work that you have achieved. Then if we go to the next report, it's a bit of a bigger drill down into real time and location, and you're going to get more details where those people are on your website from right now. And you see India is the top country visiting the website right now. United States, France, and Nigeria are kind of switching place, both of them with 2 active users right now. Australia, Brazil, and so on. And then you also get the percentages of how much of your traffic is on the website right now. And this is something, an interesting report to look at if you have an international website, because as the hours progress and as you have night or day in some time zones, the country that is most visiting the website at different hours varies considerably. And then you can use this information to adjust, for example, your social media strategy. If you know that around this time of the hour, the website is very active in India, maybe you post on social media something that the audience in India typically engages a bit better with. Then at the traffic sources, you can see where people on the website are right now, and we're gonna discuss about traffic sources a bit more down the road, but let's quickly go into them. Google Analytics uses 2 different buckets, let's call them, to categorize traffic. One of them is the source. So, or let's take them the other way around. One of them is the medium. So that is basically a channel group of different categories in social media, in digital marketing, where traffic is being sent to your website from. And here we have the big ones being non-organic, and organic refers to organic search engine traffic. So for example, when you search something on Google and you click on a non-ad link and you go to the website. Another is referral, and referral is another website sending traffic to your website. For example, another blog writes about your website and they include a link. Someone clicks on that link and comes to your website. That's referral. Another channel is social, and here Google Analytics categorizes traffic that is coming to you from Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, so on, all the big social networks. Then affiliate. Affiliate is not a category that Google recognizes by default. So for that, you'll have to create a special link that mentions it's an affiliate code and Google, and I'm going to show you how to do that as well. And then the last one here that you're seeing, this is actually a custom created one, and you can create those. And if you go to Google and search for Google Analytics campaign URL builder, you're gonna actually get a tool from Google Analytics that allows you to build those websites, those links that give you these custom channels such as affiliate and Kanaya. And to do that, you just need to put your website, example.com, the campaign source, Again, this is going to be the place that sends traffic to your website. An important thing to keep in mind here is that Google Analytics is case sensitive. So if you want write Google like this, and the next time you write Google like this, it's going to consider it two different sources and it's going to treat it differently in reports. Now you can fix that with a special filter to adjust the case, and that's one way of doing it, but I recommend you just be careful. And as a best practice, just use lower caps all the time. So let's say I want to use this link that I'm creating right now. I want to put it in an email campaign. So in a newsletter that I send out to the readers of my website, and every time someone clicks on that link and they land on my website, I want to see that those people came from email. So I put my website, let's say I'm sending them to the homepage. And the campaign source in this case, it's going to be whatever I want to call it, but newsletter sounds pretty intuitive. And the campaign medium is going to be email. You can also put something else if you're not happy with these naming conventions. You can create up your own naming convention. What's important is to just always keep it consistent. And also, if you're using the ones that Google suggests, Google already has some custom channel groupings, and you can take advantage of those if you're just sticking with the ones here. Or the ones that are more common, and when you're going to look at the source medium reports, you're going to be able to see which ones are common. And then the campaign name, so how I want to call this campaign, and let's say this is a 5% discount, and let's say I want to call it like that so I can easily identify it. And then you see here Google Analytics automatically creates this email for me. And now what I would have to do is in my newsletter just implement this URL, and that's it. And then you have also more information here that Google gives you, and also some recommended help articles that you can go a bit more in depth if you want to learn more about this. So those are the channels. So and the first one is an interesting one: medium, none, and source direct. What does this mean? So this can mean two things. The first one, and the common one, is people typing in directly the URL of your website. So if my website is example.com, when someone types in example.com and they press enter, this means a direct non-visitor. Another case when you get direct none is when Google cannot figure out where those people came from to your website. So the URL parameters are dropping for some reason, or maybe someone clicked a link inside of an app that then sent them to your website. So these are the type of scenarios burst, but you can safely assume that probably 75 to 80% of this non-direct traffic is just people typing in your URL. Then other content, you're going to be able to see exactly where on the website those people are. And again, typically you'll see most people just being on the homepage of your website, or if you have a shop, maybe the first page of the shop of the website. And this is sometimes interesting. Maybe you write on the blog a really good piece and you release it, and then you're going to see a lot of the people being on that piece, or maybe it's an older piece that for some reason all of a sudden really became popular again, and you can easily identify that here, and then you can dig a bit deeper into the reporting and see why that happened. Maybe a big news article linked to it, or maybe someone advertised it somewhere, and it's good insight that you can get. And then events, and the events are something that I briefly mentioned, but events are basically things that happen on the website that you want to tell Google Analytics to track for you. And if we go back here to the developer website, you can see it has a category here for events, and it tells you what you need to do to define an event on the website. For GTag, you even have some predefined events that you can use, and that's that. But just let's have a quick anatomy at the event. So this is a code that you have to put on the website. So for example, you have a button that when someone presses it, you want to track it in an event. So you would put an on-click gtag event, and then you would have to give it an action. So this is, you change it and you put whatever name you want in it. It really doesn't matter, but again, make sure you keep it consistent. So let's say the action is button press, and the event category, let's say, is sign up to newsletter. And then this event, if placed on the correct button on the website, would track people signing up to the newsletter. And then if you want, you can also give it a label and also a value. So for example, let's say you know that on average a newsletter subscriber is going to buy $10 worth of your products. You can give each newsletter sign up a value of 10, and then you can kind of quantify that monetary value in the Google Analytics reports. Another super easy way of implementing events on your website is by using Google Tag Manager. And in my Google Tag Manager video, I go really in depth about tracking events. And with events, you generally track, you pretty much always track user actions on the website. Things that are very common to track are people pressing on different buttons on the website. For example, people signing up to a newsletter, people downloading a free resource on your website, such as a PDF, people signing up for a webinar, people signing up for a seminar. Another popular category of events is around video. So let's say you have some embedded videos on your website, and you want to see when someone pressed the play button, when they press the pause button, or what percentage of the video they viewed. And another one you can actually do is by using some JavaScript or by using Google Tag Manager. You can actually, for example, track how much a person scrolls on your website. So let's say, and in the Google Tag Manager video, I explain and show that as well. So for example, let's say I want to see what percent of this page someone reads. I can make different events fire at different percentages on the website, and then I can know how much now someone has scrolled on this page. Or for example, I have these buttons here. I could create an event for each one of them and see when someone pressed them, and then understand how popular they are. So for example, let's say I have here GitHub, the first one, and Twitter is the third one. But when I look in my Google Analytics reports, I see that actually Twitter is the most pressed button. And maybe I make the decision that it actually makes more sense to move it from the third position to the first position, because that is the most common one that people are using. So this is what these events are measuring. So as you can see, there are some e-commerce events, and they have to do with people taking some actions. So viewing an item, adding it to the cart, or just clicking on a specific product. And then the last one for the real time are the conversions. And here what these reports are measuring are the different goals that I have created on the website that we talked about, and I'm also going to show you how to create goals. So here you see there are 3 different goals that have recently been completed. One is a purchase, one is a registration, and another one is someone started the checkout process. Goals, you can create them either when someone views a specific page on the website. So for example, you have like a thank you page after someone purchases a product or sends you an email. You can create a goal on that page. You can also create goals off of events. Someone starts playing a video on a website, you can create a goal that tracks that event. Or when someone scrolls to 100% of the page. Another goal type that you can create is for people that view a specific number of pages, or for people that spend a specific amount of time on your website. And Google Analytics also gives you something which are called smart goals that it automatically creates based on what it considers the most engaged users of your website based on different signals. But we're going to go much deeper into goals. Now let's go into the audience reports. And here, as you can see, we have a bunch of reports, but let's start, of course, with the first one, the overview one. And this is where it gets interesting, because this is how most of the Google Analytics reports are going to look from now on. And let's have a look at them. At the top, you have what it's called the segment selectors. And I'm going to discuss about segments, but for now it's important to know that we're looking at all users. So you see 100% of the user of the website we're looking at right now. On the right hand side, you have a date selector. And by default, it looks at the last 7 days. But in our case, I would want to see the reports for the last month. It takes a second to load, and now it remembers my setting, and now all the reports I go through are going to respect this setting. This is important to know because sometimes you might set up a segment here and then you click in another report and you think that that report looks strange, but that is just because Google Analytics is showing you that report for the segment that you added. So make sure if something looks strange that you're looking at the segment that you want, so either all users or maybe sometimes you actually want a specific set of users, and that you're looking at the correct date range. Then you're going to get in almost all reports a graph that is either, by default, it's set daily, and depending on how long of a time period you're looking at, daily is fine. Right now I'm looking at a month of data, so having a day-by-day breakdown of the report is fine. If I want to look at the longer period, for example, a year of data, having it day by day doesn't really make sense because I'm not going to understand anything in the report. So switching to a weekly or monthly view makes more sense. So if I show you that really quickly, let's just change this to April 2019. So as you can see, this is how it looks like in a day by day. You cannot really understand anything. So if I switch to a weekly view, I get a bit better understanding of kind of what's happening week to week, or even better, if I want to kind of understand the seasonality of the website, just switching at the monthly view. And as you can see in the case for this website, pretty much every month has the same traffic. So it doesn't really matter. You just see kind of a slight bump here in November. So that's, Black Friday and other people starting the Christmas holiday. So it's a very, let's call it static website in terms of traffic performance. But maybe you have a website that discusses, for example, the best places to spend your summer holiday. And then you're going to see traffic really fluctuating from different months. I'm just going to switch my date back here to just show me the month of April in 2020. One important thing to note is that by increasing the date range that you're looking at, the whole reporting interface kind of slows down. So that's why you don't want to like really look at very long dates if you're actually not really using that. So now you see kind of looks strange because it just shows me one line for the last 30 days, but that is because I have month selected here. So I would want to go back to day, so I get that traffic that shows me day by day. Okay, then the next things, users. Users are basically what Google Analytics calls people. So you can assume that the user is one person visiting your website. The way Google Analytics measures users is based on unique cookies. So for example, right now I'm using my personal laptop using the Chrome browser. If I visit the same website from my mobile phone, Google Analytics is going to consider that a new user. Then if I visit the website from my work laptop, another new user. Then if I visit the website again from my own computer but using a different browser, another user. And as you can see, all of a sudden, me, just one single person, I'm 4 different users for Google Analytics. And this is one of the limitations of working with Google Analytics is the way it treats user. So basically, if I visit the website from a different device or from a different browser, or after I cleaned my cookies, it's going to see me as a new user. There is a workaround for that for people that log into your website. That's called user ID, and we're going to discuss that as well a bit later on. The next thing is, and these two users and new users in older versions of Google Analytics used to be called visitors. So if you come across any article on the internet that's a bit older and discusses about visitors, just know that it means users. Then you have sessions, which again previously used to be called visits. And a session basically means a visit to the website. It also has some interesting ways in which it's calculated. So for example, a session by default lasts 30 minutes. So if I open a website and then I go to the kitchen and I start cooking, and then I come back to my computer and I press on another link on the website, that's going to be a new session. So a session basically combines together all the action I take when I visit the website in a specific visit. So let's say I come today to the website, I click around on a few links, I read through the website, and then I close the website. All of that is going to be a session. Let's say tomorrow I come again to the website, I click again through a few links, I buy a product. All of these actions are going to be a new session. So normally the number of sessions is always should be at least equal, but generally bigger than the number of users, because a user is going to have at least one session, but generally probably more. And you can see in our case here, the number of sessions per user is 1.3. So it means that the users of these websites on average are visiting the website 1.3 times. And averages are one of those very dangerous elements in statistics, and you have to be very careful with them. And I'm gonna show you that in some of the reports, because averages can be very misleading and also don't show you the full picture. Let's say your website only has 100 users, and you have 99 users visit your website once, and then you have one user that visited your website 10,000 times. Your average number of sessions per user is going to look decent, but then when you dig down into the data, you're just going to see that you just have like one super loyal fan, and then everybody else doesn't care about it. And then the page views are all of the page views that were done by these users in this time frame. So a page view is every time someone visits a page. So for example, I land on your website on the home page. That's one page view. I then go to the About Us. That's the second page view. I then go back to the home page. That's a third page view. So that's going to be one user doing one session with 3 different page views. So generally your page view count is going to be pretty high. The only exceptions to that is when you have like a single page website where all of the data is just on one page and people just need to scroll down and there's no links to click to, then you're going to have the number of page views is going to be pretty similar to your number of users and of sessions. Then the number of pages per session, so on average 4. Average session duration is 2 minutes 50. And the way that session duration is calculated in Google Analytics, this is very important, is as the difference in timestamps between the last page visited or the last event and the first page visited. And this is very important because let's say I land on your website and you have a super long article on a page that takes me half an hour to read. And I just read that one article, I landed directly on that article, maybe from a social link or from an ad or from finding it on Google. I spend half an hour reading that article and then I leave the web page without doing anything else. In Google Analytics, that is going to be a 0-second session because there's no 2 consecutive page view or a following event that Google Analytics can make a difference of timestamps. And then another example, let's say I visit the homepage, I spend 1 minute on the homepage, I click on an article, I spend half an hour reading that article, I leave the website, that is going to be a 1 minute visit for Google Analytics because the timestamp of the second page happened a minute after the timestamp of the first page, and then there's no subsequent timestamp for Google Analytics to figure out how long I actually stayed on the site. There is a workaround to that, and I'm gonna have a video on that on the channel as well, and you can find articles online about it. You can actually create in JavaScript an event trigger that triggers the event every, let's say, 30 seconds or every 1 minute when people are sitting on the website, so that you don't run in that problem. And then the last one is the bounce rate. And bounce rate is one of those metrics that people love, other people hate. Some people say it's super important, so people say it's not that important. I'm somewhere in the middle. I look at the bounce rate, but I don't think it's the one metric that rules them all. What bounce rate does, it's basically show you how many people left from the same page that landed on without doing anything else. So for example, I land on the home page. I sit there for however long I sit. I don't click any button. I don't do anything, and then I leave the site. That is going to be a bounce rate of 100% for Google Analytics. If I do something, the bounce rate drops to 0. So then you're going to have, and then you see in this case, the bounce rate of the website is around 50%. So basically what this means is that half of the people that come to the website leave the website without doing nothing, and half of the people actually click on something else and do something on the website. And bounce rates kind of different a bit on different industry and so on. Generally, an acceptable bounce rate should be below 30%. If you're in the e-commerce business, it should be lower than 20%. But again, don't be super worried about the bounce rate. Coming back to that blog example, if you have a blog and the article takes half an hour to read, and someone read the whole article and then left but didn't take any other action on the website, that's still a pretty valuable visit in my eyes. It's going to be 100% bounce rate, but the person spent half an hour on the website. And again, you can create an event with JavaScript that triggers every 30 seconds, every minute, or whatever you feel suitable is. And then that is going to reduce this bounce rate, and it's going to give you something more accurate for the people that spend a lot of time on the website. And then other things in the overview, and this is, you're going to see in all of these main categories, all of them have like an overview page. Then you get some top level details about some other reports. So the main language of the browser, some demographics elements that you can click through, and links to go deeper into, basically just take data from these reports and put it here. I generally almost never really use this part because I just prefer to just go into the report and see the full thing. So let's go into the active users report. And here, this is, you can see how many users are active in the first day, how many of them return 7 days later, 40 days, and 28 days. This is a report that is super common to use and like super important in the app world. In the website world, it, let's say, appeared only more recently. But you get an easy understanding of how many people are actually returning to your website across multiple days, and you know, between quotes are let's say loyal to your website. And just I'm gonna quickly switch back to the overview report and show you two more things. One of them is on the graphs. In all reports, you can generally change what you're seeing on the graph. So by each report has a default, generally users, but I can switch it, for example, and see the graph in sessions. And you can compare it with another metric. So let's say I can do sessions versus users. And if I do something like this, what could I see interesting from this would be, for example, maybe at some point of this graph, you start having the number of sessions per user really goes up. So maybe you did some kind of technical change to your website and you want to, and that way you will be able to tell it by looking at the graph at one metric versus another. And the last one is you can actually add annotation to your graph. So let's say maybe on a specific date you change something on your website which is important, and that might show differently in the report. You know, it might really affect your reporting, and you might want to remember that in the future that happened. So you can create new adnotation. You select the date for which you have it, and let's say on the 1st of May I started SEO project, let's say. And this would maybe mean for me that I started working on the SEO of the web pages, and after the date of May 1st, I should expect some increase in the number of visits I get from SEO. Or maybe I moved my website to another server or something that is important, might affect anything. And then you can have that note just for yourself. Or if there are multiple people working on the account, you can actually share it with all the people so they see it. And then I save it. And then you can see I have this note here, and it's going to be visible throughout my reports. Then you have the two reports that are in beta. One of them is the lifetime value, and here if you have either some events that are tracking values or you have goals, you can see the lifetime value of your users across a time period. And in this case, we're looking at 90 days, and you see it's actually growing. So people on the first day, on average, they only spend $1 on the website. But if you go further, people that have in the terms of 90 days, they spend on average almost $3. So the 90-day average is two times and a bit higher than the first day. And this is very important to generally calculate the lifetime value of your users, because very few users are going to spend all of the money with you at once. So let's say you have an e-commerce store. You might have someone coming today, they buy a product for $100. They come next week, buy another product for $200. Then they come 6 months later, they buy another product for $50. So their lifetime value is already $350. But if you would have only considered the first purchase, which was $100, you might think that that user is not that valuable. So you can use this reporting of lifetime value and other lifetime value calculations that you could do in the CRM system that you're using on your website to inform how much money you can spend on marketing. Let's say you're a subscription type of business, and that the monthly subscription you make $10 profit. Then you might think that, okay, the maximum that I can spend is just $10 to acquire a user. But let's say every user you acquire on average spends with you 12 months. In that case, the average user value that you're getting is actually $120, not $10. So you can use that information to actually spend more money on your user acquisition. Then you have the cohort analysis, which shows you like on the different cohorts. So when you acquire someone a day, how much they do specific actions later down the road. So in this case, you can see here exactly what you're looking at, and I'm looking at acquisition date and user retention. So 20% like 2% of people come back the next day, then another 1.25, and you can see by day 6 pretty much none of my users are coming back. This is a really good report to look at for e-commerce websites, to see how often people are shopping with you, for blogs as well, to see how often people are coming to engage with your content. Then you have the audiences reports. And then we go into the demographics reports. And in the demographics, you're gonna get a breakdown for all of your users. In this case, you see about 60% are female and about 40% are male, and then their age distribution. As I mentioned earlier, in almost all reports in Google Analytics, you can add a segment. So for example, here, let's add a segment, and Google Analytics gives me a lot of segments by default, and I also can create my own segments. But let's say I want to see the age and gender for mobile traffic, so from people that come from smartphones. And if I apply that, you see I get two reports, one all users and then one with mobile traffic. And when I look at this report, I can immediately see that the traffic I get from the users 25 to 34, they have a lot more traffic from mobile compared to the other age groups. And also the age distribution. This is very interesting, actually, that is changing. Actually, females on mobile, they're 65% of the traffic almost, compared to 60. So this is an interesting way to look at one versus the others. And then you can, for example, if I just wanted to look at mobile traffic, I can remove this segment. And you can add multiple segments here to compare them side by side. But in my case, I want to remove this as well. And when you remove all segments, it automatically goes back to all users. So I'm happy with looking at all users. The reports under demographics and interests, you don't get them automatically in Google Analytics. You actually have to do some settings. And I'm going to show you how to do them. So under admin, I'm going to switch back to this example account. You'll have to go under property settings. And here you see you have enabled demographics and interest reports. And it tells you a bit what to do. You have to turn this to on. And you have to save it. And I also recommend going under tracking info, tracking code, under data collection, and turning also on these remarketing and advertising features. Obviously, this is going to tell you what to do, and it also tells you that you have to inform the visitors of your website about these features, so via privacy policy. So do read the legalese that is on these pages, and save that, and you're going to be getting those demographics and interest reports. I generally enable them on all websites I administer, because I find them to be good. So we already went through this. Let's go to the gender report a bit more. We saw the overview, but then you can actually have a breakdown. So a breakdown of age, so how many users and how that varies through time. Maybe you do a special promotion for students at some point, and then you will see that the young age group really spikes up. But here is something interesting that I mentioned earlier about e-commerce and goals, and that in many reports they are present, and you can see them here present. By default, I can see my e-commerce tab. And what's the e-commerce conversion rate? This is a very bad conversion rate. Like generally you'd want, like on average, to be somewhere between 2 and 3%. If you're above 2-3%, that's great. If you're below, you probably have some work to do. In this case, it's 0.4%. This site is horrible for conversions. But let's see if I can see anything interesting here. And for example, I have here the age group 35 to 44. They represent about 15% of my traffic, but only 3% of my revenue. Whereas this older group of 45 to 54, even though they only represent 8% of my traffic, they're actually 19% of the revenue of the website. And even this group right here, 55-64, it's only 5% compared to 18s, which are 25%, but they bring almost the same revenue, like almost 14% and almost 60%. So in the case of this website, it might actually make sense to run some advertising for targeting older age groups, or some products that are maybe more appropriate for that age group, because apparently those people are spending a bit more money with me. Another thing that you might have noticed has changed as you move through reports. You actually get here at the top at the Explorer, instead of just the summary tab, I can actually switch to e-commerce here. And then it gives me some reports that are specifically tailored for e-commerce. And now you can see how many users I had in each age group, how many sessions, and also the revenue breakdown, the transactions, the average order value, the conversion rate, and the per session value. And here I can see another interesting thing. For example, as earlier I just said that the 55-64 are basically bring just as much money as 18 to 24. But that's something on average. But look here at the order value. These guys are spending on average 75 on order, whereas these guys are only 30. So each visit from these guys that are actually buying is more than twice as valuable as a buying session from these guys. So that is very important to keep in mind. So that a bit contradicts the conclusions I got from the first reports that I should maybe focus more on these guys. I should probably focus more on the young crowd because they apparently are spending more per order. So every dollar I spend in advertising for each session, it might bring me actually more dollars back. So this type of back and forth between the reports is very important when you're doing the analysis in Google Analytics or indeed any other kind of BI tool or analytics tool. You can almost never look in data at just one data point and think that is the truth. You have to look at it in aggregate, you have to compare it across different reports, you have to take different things into account. And let me give you an example. Let's say you are based in the US, in any state, and you see, let's say you are based in New York, right? New York is all the way on the East Coast, and you're looking at your users, and you see that from California, you have a lot of traffic on the website, but no one is buying. And you might think to yourself, California is all across the US on the total opposite side. On the West Coast, and you might think, okay, people in California are not really buying for my website, they're not that valuable, so maybe I should not advertise in California. But then you think about it and you look on your website, and let's say since you're based in New York, your shipping cost of the product in New York is maybe free or maybe cost $5, whereas to ship the product in California it costs $200. This is a bit an extreme example. But if you see this, then you realize, wait a second, maybe clients in California are valuable as well, but just my shipping expenses there are really ridiculous. So can I work with another supplier to get the shipping down, or can I open a fulfillment center in California so that it becomes cheaper? So you can use this data that you're getting from Google Analytics and also thinking outside of your website performance and asking deeper questions about your business. Or maybe you have a lot of international traffic, but you're not serving international clients, and by looking at the report, you get a lot of international traffic, and it might start making sense to serve international clients as well. I just went back to the summary under Explorer. And as you can see here, I have a drop down as well under e-commerce. And I can actually switch to see the goals as well. So let's say I maybe want to see how many people register on my website based on their age. If I select that, you can see you get a breakdown for each age. And also from the top, I can switch to goal set 1 and get the same thing for the different goals I have created. By default in Google Analytics, you can create up to 20 goals, and you have the first goal set is the first goals, the second goal set are the next goals, and so on. And then you get them all broken down here. And most of the reports you can also switch here to site usage for them to see. And basically, you're just going to get some standard reports like user sessions and so on. I'm going to go back to summary. And the last thing I want to show you here, that is again common to most reports that I'm going to show you, is that you can actually change the way data is displayed. By default, you get it in the table, but you can also get it to see it as a pie chart if you're maybe more of a visual than just looking at numbers, or maybe you just want to see it as a pie chart. You take a print screen of that pie chart and you put it in a presentation, so you don't have to download the data from Google Analytics and change like that. You can also see it as a bar graph. You have another visualization option, which compares them to the average. And in this case, you can see that compared to the average, the 25 to 34 is a much higher average. But then again, as I said, you can always, or in most cases, you can change what you're looking at in Google Analytics. So let's say I want to look at revenue. So then compared to the average, the average revenue from this group is the best one. But let's maybe look at the transactions. And now you can see that this age group is the most well represented. And coming back to what I mentioned earlier, you never look at data as a singular point. You look at it in aggregate. So see, I'm switching through reports back and forth, and I'm looking at things. I'm noticing all kinds of differences, and that gives me ideas for what I can change on my website, what I can change in my marketing, and sometimes even what I can change in my business. And then you have a last visualization options. Let's just go into that as well. Then you have the gender report, and it's basically everything we just saw, just broken down by male and female. And this is interesting here to see. You see, like, males are much higher percentages of my visitors to the website. But let's switch here to e-commerce. Yeah, for this time range, actually males made more transactions and produced significantly more revenue than women. Sometimes this is a very good report to look at. I remember once I was looking at the website that was, let's say, more geared towards men in what they were selling. But when we looked at the analytics, a lot of the purchases and the transactions were actually done by women. So pretty much almost half of the overall revenue of the website was generated by women, even though they only represented, if I remember correctly, like 10 to 15% of the traffic. And that was because a lot of those women that were coming to the website were actually buying those products or gifts for their husbands, their fathers, and so on. And this informed the marketing strategy in that case. And the company started offering gifting options and gift wrapping, so an additional revenue source. And also when they were doing their marketing, they made sure around big events like Black Friday or Father's Day or so on, they made sure that they created special campaigns that they also targeted women with them in case they wanted to buy a gift. Then you get the interest reports that you also get. You also have access to them by checking those interest and remarketing options that I showed you earlier. And this is basically a categorization that Google Analytics does Google does automatically for its users based on the websites that they're visiting. So a lot of these people are shoppers, so it means that they basically buy a lot online. And that's how Google puts them into those shoppers category. Another category is travel, so people that are looking a lot at travel websites and so on. These reports can be useful when you're maybe thinking about how you want to expand the product category that you have on your website. Let's say you have a lot of people that are interested in travel. You might maybe could find a specific product that you could sell to those people, or maybe use that to inform the type of articles you write on your blog for SEO. So let's say you have your website's about financial advice. Maybe you create an article about financial advice for travelers, and that could bring you more travel interested type of people, or maybe it's going to be very well received by the people that are already using your website and are interested in travel. And another place where you can use these categories, if you're using Google Ads, which was formerly called Google AdWords, in the display, when you create display campaigns, you have an option to target by interests, and then you can use those interests there. And basically the other reports are just deep dives into these reports. And again, you can change everything. We see that in other report. You can add segments. You can change here from e-commerce view to a different view, and so on. I'm not going to go through the other two because they're basically the same thing. The next one is geo, and under geo you can of course go under language. And language, this is an interesting one because it basically tells you the language of the browser, not necessarily the language of the user. So let's say I'm located in Spain, my mother tongue is Spanish, but I use Chrome or Firefox or whatever browser I use. Let's say I use it in German. Then Google Analytics as a language is gonna say my language is German, even though I'm, a Spanish person with my mother tongue is Spanish and I'm visiting an English website. If my browser language is German, then Google Analytics is going to say it's German. And then here you see what it is, and that's why you also have these differences of English Great Britain, and English US, because this is how different browsers report the language. Most of the times I don't find it as a very useful report, just because of this difference that I mentioned, because it takes it from the browser language. So even let's say I see a lot of English US, maybe just a lot of the people have the browser in English. Things nowadays are a bit different because all the major browsers are translated into a lot of languages. But if you go back 10 years ago, like most of the smaller languages, they didn't have a language-specific browser, and everybody just used it in English anyway. They didn't understand anything in the menu of the browser, but they just knew what buttons to press, and that was that. The location reports, however, are much more interesting, and they actually give you the place where Google Analytics based thinks those people are located in. It takes this information based off of the IP of the users. So if your users are using something like a VPN and they're faking their location to somewhere else, there's nothing we can do about it. So as you can see in the case of this website, most of their traffic is coming from the US. And you can actually drill down into the country level, either by clicking on the country here, or by clicking on the country on the map, or indeed you see you have some menus up here that you can click on. I'm just going to click here in the table on United States. It's going to give me a breakdown of, it's being called regions, but it's actually the different states in the US. And as you can see, most of my users are California and Texas. Actually, New York and Texas. New York and Texas, very close. Again, the same as in any other report in Google Analytics. I can change the segment I'm looking at, the date range, exactly what I'm seeing here. I can change the reporting down here from e-commerce to something else. I can change the type of graph I'm looking at. So all of these things apply across the different reports. So let's dig a bit more into California. And I get a city level view. So most people, San Francisco, of course. San Francisco, Los Angeles, the biggest cities in the area, so I'll be expecting to see that. Sunnyvale is pretty up here, but then I can also actually, this is an interesting one, I can look at the metro report, and this gives you actually metro groupings of the different areas, and this can be very good to understand, and also super useful. For example, let's say you have some sort of a service type of business, let's say maybe you clean houses. And then if you look at this type of metro, you can very easily figure out where you should be opening new offices, or where should be hiring more staff that they can go and serve these different areas. I really like this report. And also, again, you can be using whatever information you get from here to inform your digital marketing, both in Google Ads or in Facebook ads, or indeed in most other advertising platform. You can define what country or what city you want to target. So if from this location report you're seeing that you're getting a lot of people, let's go back a bit to this report though to see the whole US. And by default, you see the tables are filtered by a column, generally the first column. But actually I don't want to see by the users, I actually want to see by revenue. So if I just click on revenue, it's going to order my reports based on revenue. Let's go back to region here. And I order it by revenue. You see that, remember, New York was the second place in terms of users. In terms of revenue, it's only number 5. And you see Georgia actually has very few users, but brings a lot of revenue. So I could use this information to maybe create a Google Ads campaign, or maybe a Facebook Ads campaign, targeting people in Georgia, and bring more of them to my website, because apparently people in Georgia seem to be interested in buying what I have to sell. And even in terms of their e-commerce conversion rate, you see it's super high, 0.72 compared to the others. I can actually click on the e-commerce column and order by it. And look, even more interesting, Arkansas, look here, it's 3%. That's a very good conversion rate, 3%. So if I could get a lot more traffic from Arkansas, and have all of it converting at 3%, that would be something really, really great. Then if I switch to behavior, the first report is the new versus returning. So how many people are new to the website in this time period and how many of them are returning. And as you can see, most visitors are new visitors. And especially for sites like this one, which is an e-commerce website, you're gonna typically see a lot of new visitors, especially if it's not like a super known brand. I presume Amazon.com, they see a lot of returning visitors, but normally, let's say you're more niche type of e-commerce website, you're generally gonna see a high percentage of new visitors. For blogs, sometimes it might be closer together, but if you have like very good SEO on your blog, you're generally again gonna see a lot of new visitors. So I generally don't worry a lot as long as your returning count is around 20%. That's okay, you know. Then you have two reports that I find pretty interesting: the frequency and recency reports. So the first report here, as it says here, count of sessions. And you remember maybe when I said earlier that never look at averages, because averages could be very misleading. So if I go back here under audiences and overview, you can see that the average number of sessions per user was 1.3. But if I go here under behavior again and frequency and recency, you see I don't get the percentage here, but you know, probably like 60-70% of my users only came once to my website. And look here, I have like 3 super committed fans that came over 200 times to my website. So that's why I don't take averages with a grain of salt, because maybe, you know, maybe these 200 plus people, maybe they were like 100 people that did this, then your average session per user was probably 2 something, and you would have been pretty happy. And when you come to this report, you actually see, oops, actually most people only come once. Then you have the page views, and again, careful with the averages. As you see, there are you have some sessions where people visited a lot of pages, and other sessions where people just visited one page view. And then you also have these reports of days since last sessions. So you see you have some people that come again to your website after 6 months, few of them, and you know, the longer the time, the decreasing chance of a user coming back. So that's why it is important to constantly have some kind of digital marketing presence, either some Facebook campaigns or Google ads, or have really good SEOs or really good email marketing communication, so that these users keep coming back to your website, because otherwise they might forget about your website. Again, very similar to other reports, you can add segments here, you can change the date range, you can do all of that. Then the engagement reports, and here you can see how much people stayed on the website. But remember what I was telling earlier about how this is calculated. It's calculated as the timestamp between the last page view or last event and the first one. So here you might see a lot of people in the 0 plus 10 seconds, but these are also people that basically they just visited one page of your website. Maybe they stayed on that one page for like 1 hour and read absolutely everything that's on it, but they left from the same page. Because this is an e-commerce website, and obviously to buy something you're gonna have to go through multiple pages, I would want to see this number here smaller. But if this would be a blog, I wouldn't be so concerned. Obviously, it's better even if it's a blog, if people are browsing more articles and read them, but still, if you do like super long, in-depth content, it's not that bad. And here you can also see you have a secondary report of page depth, which actually looks at how many pages people have actually visited. You know, this is strange, you see less than one page, but most people just visited one page, and then you have like 2,000 people in sessions that they visited more than 20 pages. Session quality, this is something that Google calculates automatically, and basically it gives a rating on how it is based on how many pages people visit, how long they stayed on the site, if they did transactions or not, and so on. You can actually learn more about how exactly this Google Analytics does this. And as you can see, the higher the quality, the better the revenue for you. Like here, when Google says that the quality is between 51 and 100, and let's open it up more, you see the more number of transactions you're getting. So Google is pretty smart about how it actually does this. And then a newer beta report is the conversion probability, where Google estimates what conversion probability you have for the different sessions. Then you have the technology reports, which in the past I found some of them a lot more interesting and useful, but as technology progresses, I find myself using them less and less. The first one is the browser, so what type of browser people are using. Here you might want to look at how many people are using Internet Explorer, and you can actually, as in most other Google Analytics reports, you can drill down. So if I press here on Internet Explorer, it's actually going to give me the versions that people are using. So maybe you have a website that a lot of people are still coming from Internet Explorer version 6, and then you might want to make some adjustments in the CSS of your website to make sure everything is fine. So for example, sometimes you might find yourself stuck in a report like this and you don't know what to do. If you just look up here, you get what are called breadcrumbs. And if you click on the different breadcrumbs, it's going to take you back to where you want to go. So here I'm going to press on all, and it's going to take me back to the full report. So as I said, this I don't really use it that much anymore. I don't find it interesting. You then have the operating systems, where you can see what type of operating system people are coming from, and generally you're going to see either Windows as the first one or Android as the first one. Here in this case, I'm a bit surprised that Mac is so high, but this is probably a lot of tech employees are visiting this website, and a lot of tech companies give out MacBooks to their employees, so that's why this is here. But generally on most sites, you're not going to see Mac so high. Actually interesting, because 5 people are still using Blackberries for Windows Phone. We even have visits from Xbox, which is interesting. Then the screen resolution, basically what type of resolutions people are using. And this report I really used a lot back a few years ago when mobile was really catching on, just to figure out how much traffic I'm getting from smaller screens. And you can use this report also to inform when you're creating in CSS in your website, if you're creating breakpoints at different resolutions. Here is a good place where you can see what resolutions you might want to consider for your websites. And the screen colors is actually something that I pretty much never use, so the color depth of the different monitors that people are using. And another one that I haven't used in years is the Flash version. Maybe up until 10 years ago, it was pretty common or pretty fancy to build websites in Flash. That has really died out, especially since Apple stopped supporting it, and then even more support for Flash was dropped, so nowadays I never use this report. And then another one, and this sometimes can be interesting, is the service provider of the internet. In this case, all my traffic shows is not set. But sometimes here you actually get exactly where people are coming to your website from, like is it AT&T, is it something else. Then on mobile, you have 2 reports. The first one, I think it's more interesting, and a breakdown of how many people are coming from where to your website. In this case, I'm actually very surprised that so much of their traffic is coming from desktop, like 70%. Nowadays, it's most common for most websites to get around 50%, pretty close to 50% to be mobile traffic. Mobile traffic has really exploded in the last few years, and it's continuing to grow. So in most cases, you're going to see a pretty big amount of traffic from mobile devices. And if you still don't have a mobile-friendly website or a responsive website at this point, you should really focus on changing that and getting a mobile-friendly website. And then you have a devices reports, which I find pretty interesting, not necessarily very useful, but you actually see exactly what type of device people are using to access your site. And maybe you sell phone accessories. This could be pretty interesting. You see a lot of traffic from iPhones. Maybe you start selling iPhone cases, or you can use this information to make sure that your website is properly displaying on Apple iPhones and so on. Then you have some cross-device reports, which are still in beta, and in this case of this account, I don't have access to them. But basically, it shows you if you have user IDs configured, it shows you how many people are switching between different devices. So let's talk a bit about that. Remember when I was saying earlier that if I visit the website once from my laptop and then from my phone, Google is going to see me as two users? If I have a website that allows users to log in, I can configure something which is called user ID, we should be able to find it here somewhere. It's not in the main menu. If I search here for user ID and I switch to it, user identification, measurement protocol, user ID, and for Android, user ID G tag. Let's search it like that. Apparently it's under user verification. And see, I thought it would give me more details, but it allows me to set a user ID. Basically what user ID does, it's let's say you have an e-commerce site where people have to log in to buy something. Each time they log in from your own CRM system, you're going to set a user ID, and this is usually the unique identification key you have for each user. So let's say I'm user number 1234. I come from my laptop today, I log into the website, you recognize me that I'm user 1234. Tomorrow I come from my phone, I log in, and again you recognize me as user 1234. And this is very useful to build out the user paths. You'll be able to figure out how many devices people are using to access your website, and you're also going to be able to figure out maybe they're using different devices at different times of the day, or maybe to take different actions. For example, you might see that in the case of an e-commerce site, they use mobile phones a lot to browse to products, but then they use their computer to actually buy products. And then you could use this information to inform the way you buy advertising, and making sure you're also targeting mobile users. To actually use user ID, you have to make a change in the settings. So if I go back to admin and to that example account, and I go under tracking info here, oops, I go under tracking info and under user ID. You see I have to turn it on here, press next, it tells me kind of what I have to do to get it working, asks me if I want to turn on user session unification, and generally you want this to be turned on. What this means is, let's say I start a session on your website now and I log in halfway through it. If you have user session unification turned on, then it's going to recognize that entire session is coming from me, user 1234. If you put this to off, it's gonna half of the session is gonna be anonymous, and then only the logged in part is gonna be on. Generally, you want this to on. Next step, and the last step, is to create a different user ID view. So it's gonna create a special view for this, and just press create, and give it the correct name of user ID view, so that you know what it is in the future. And remember, I wanted most of my reporting to be United Kingdom time. Create view. And that's that. And now I get all of that user ID data in this separately. The user ID is a pretty advanced feature, and I rarely see websites using it. So let's go back to the demo account, and let's go back into the reports. we were under audience, and we pretty much finished these ones. The last one I want to take a look at is the benchmark reports. And if you have benchmarking, you have to turn it. You remember it was a default options when you create an account. If you don't see anything here, you have to go under admin. I'm gonna switch back to my example account, and under account settings, you have this option here, benchmarking. So you have to have this turned on to see it. What that does, I mean, you can read the description there, but basically it allows your website to compare to other websites, but then basically your website data is also being used for that comparison. Generally, you want to have that on. Maybe if you're like super secretive around your website, you want to turn it off, but I generally have it turned on. And then it takes my industry vertical, or sometimes if it doesn't recognize it, you would have to select it from here. And let's see if I have anything e-commerce here. No, it should maybe retail. Retail trade. What's the last one? Retail jobs, no? Maybe shopping. Yeah, let's say that it's like this website actually mostly sells apparel. So let's select that. It allows me to, but unfortunately there's no, or is it? It allows me United States, all regions. Yeah, it probably doesn't have enough data for this. Yeah, so sometimes it doesn't have, for a specific industry, it doesn't have enough data to show you. So in that case, you should either select a higher level, and in this case, I'm gonna just go with all shopping. And hopefully here, yeah, still don't have any data. Not even if I switch to all regions. Yeah, strange. Now I see what the problem. I was actually in the wrong account. Yeah, sometimes it happens. So you see, I can either switch accounts from here, from down here under admin, or I can just click here and select my correct account to see this data. So I'm gonna be in shopping, and again, United States, all regions. These are my daily sessions, and it also tells me against how many other websites it's benchmarking me. So 483 other websites, and as you can see, I have a ton more referral than the other websites have, a lot more search traffic, but then I'm pretty bad at display advertising, paid advertising, email, and so on. So I can use this data to kind of figure out what these other websites are doing, and see how I fit to them. I generally like to be maybe a bit higher than other websites, especially if I'm higher in organic search than other websites. I'm generally very happy. Location, basically the same report, but benchmarked across the location. So on average, I'm getting more sessions than other websites in this size, but fewer new sessions. So these other websites are better at attracting more new users. So maybe they do, I mean, I know for sure that they do more advertising from the channels reports that I just looked at. And then last but not least, the devices one, where you can see how you compare with other websites from a device perspective. And see here, it's very obvious what I said earlier that I find strange, that this website has very little traffic from mobile. And as you can see, compared to other websites, indeed I have far fewer mobile traffic than usual, and much more desktop traffic. And then the user flow reports, which is the last one from the audience reports, that pretty much just shows how users go through the website. So by default, it's going to start from country, but I can change it to something else here. Let's say I want to see it by operating system, and let's say I want to see how differently people from different operating systems might be navigating to the website. So if you hover these lines between, you see what percentage is represented by that. So people from Windows coming to the home page represent 22% of the traffic. And then here you can see from that traffic, 31%, so a third of the people drop off. Basically, they're not doing anything else on the site. And then you can navigate through here and see what's happening at different levels. And that's an introduction into the audience reports. Of course, there's a lot more than we can talk about, and I have separate videos for most of these reports that goes really in depth about each specific topic. So if there's one topic that you want to know more about, search for the appropriate video and you can find. Under acquisition, again, starts with an overview. And this is a very nice overview report. It's probably the best overview report in Google Analytics that gives you some very nice visual graphs from the beginning that you could be using. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I want to give you directly into the more in-depth report, let's say. Before I go to that, as you can see, Google Analytics also has some features here. You can save a report, you can export it, so you can download it as a PDF or as an Excel file and work with it. You can actually share it, so someone that has access to your Google Analytics account, if you want to show them exactly this report that you're looking at right now without telling them, hey, you need to change the date to this, the range, press that and that, you press the share button. You can send it to another email, and when they click the link that they receive, they get exactly the report that you're looking at. And you can also make some edits that changes your custom reports, but this is an advanced topic that I'm not going to go into. So going back to all traffic channels, and channels, I explained it a bit earlier. It groups by default what Google Analytics, let's say, knows about. So it knows about organic search, and here it puts traffic that's coming from search engines, so Google search, Bing, other search engines that might be common in your country. Sometimes you have to configure the search engines, and actually let me show you how you would do that. For that, we will have to go back to the example view here, and doesn't matter, because we're going to have to go under admin. So let's say I'm a website in Russia. In Russia, Yandex is a pretty big search engine. So let's go to yandex.ru. Unfortunately, I don't speak any Russian, so I don't understand anything that is being written here. But let's say I just search for example, and I press enter. And you see how the URL changed here. It's yandex.ru search ? I'm not sure what this represents, but then it actually puts here the keyword that I searched for, and here you have, this is, if it's introduced by a question mark or an and symbol, it's called the parameter. And I have this text equals example. So it means that the placeholder for my keyword is the word text. I can check that by searching for something else. Let's say I search for test. And you can see now text is equal to test. So if I go into analytics and I go under tracking info and organic search sources, I can add the search engine here. Search engine name, in my case Yandex. Domain name contains, I'm going to put here, and then my query parameter. And the query parameter is what I said here that holds my search, and in this case is text. And I'll put that here. And that's all I had to do. If I want to configure Yandex across multiple, maybe they have something else, you can just leave it like that. And that's it. Google actually works the same way. If I go to google.com, if I search for example, you can see here in the URL, somewhere you're going to have the keyword example. See here. You have and q equals example. So if I would want to configure Google Analytics to recognize Google as a search engine, it does by default, but let's say it didn't. I would add it here, Google, and the query parameter would be Q. And I can go on and on these examples. Last one, let's say yahoo.com. I agree. Let me search here example again. And you see in this case the query parameter is a P. So I would put Yahoo and the query parameter I would put a P. So if in your country you have a search engine that is very used, this is how you would configure it. And then you would get the data from it in the Google Analytics report as organic traffic. Otherwise, you're probably going to get it as referral traffic most of the time, or sometimes as direct none. Then direct, I already explained what that is. So that's people typing your URL directly, or maybe they come to your website from a bookmark, or sometimes Google Analytics cannot figure out where they came from. For example, maybe the link to your website is inside an app, and Analytics is not going to be able to track that. Referral is another website sending traffic to your website. In this case, you don't have to configure anything specifically for the URL. Google Analytics detects automatically that that's coming from another website. So let's say a blog is linked into your website, that is going to be a referral. Social is going to be coming from a social network, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, so on. Affiliate, you'll have to configure it by using the URL configuration page that I showed you earlier. So this one, the campaign URL builder, and here you will have to put affiliate for your campaign. Then display, this is what Google recognizes as display advertising. So for this, under campaign medium, you should put either banner or CPM, cost per mille, so mille being the Roman word for 1,000. Other is everything that cannot fit into any of these, and paid search is something like ads that you see in Google search or in Bing search that Google recognizes automatically. So if you use the campaign URL builder, if you put here CPC, so cost per click, that's what Google recognizes as paid search in Google Analytics. Then you have the Treemaps report, which shows in a very visual way how much of these metrics is coming from where, and you can play around with them to use the visualization. Then you have the source medium, which gives you a list of all the sources in medium, and this Google organic means someone came using the Google search engine and they clicked on an organic link, so not on paid advertising. Direct none, already explained. Analytics.google.com/referral, this means a link from this website that sent traffic to our current website. This is coming from this is a referral from mall.googleplex.com, sending traffic here. DFA, this is probably some double-click advertising. CPM, cost per mille, as I said earlier. Baidu is the search engine, the big search engine in China, and organic traffic. And something I haven't showed you until now, but in a lot of Google Analytics reports, you're going to have more than 10 lines, and from here you can select how many you want to see. So see here I have 58 in total. I can select either to see 10, 25, 50, 100, maybe more. Again, the more you select, the slower Google Analytics is going to become. So I generally just like to look at the top 10, maybe in some reports the top 25, but I rarely go more than that. Maybe sometimes if I'm looking for something really specific. Other things that I would want to show you now is, as mentioned earlier, you already saw in other reports like the location reports that sometimes you have multiple submenus, let's call them, or primary dimensions that you could be looking at. And yeah, that's actually the correct name for this in this report, primary dimensions, but in the location reports not. But what you can do in Google Analytics in most reports, you can add a secondary dimension. So for example here, source, and I can add a secondary dimension of medium to it. And then this report is going to break down for me more. So we're going to see for each source what was the medium as well. And a thing that so far we haven't discussed, you can also actually search in these reports. So if I go here and I just search for Google, see here, it's going to now give me everything that contains Google. So I have Google Organic, I have analytics at google.com as a referral, I have google.com, and see here Google CPC. This is paid advertising on Google, and some other options here. And here I can also go to advanced and see here I have a secondary dimension of medium. So I can select if I want to search, to make the search in this primary dimension or the secondary dimension. I can choose if I want to include or exclude that. So let's say I want to actually exclude Google. I want to see everything else, not Google, in this report. And that's how I would do it. Or you can add and exclude other dimension. You can make all kinds of crazy combinations. And here you have either exactly matching, regular expressions, begins, ends. These are pretty obvious what they mean. Regular expression allows you to search for multiple things in the same result. So let's do an include filter for Google. And in regular expressions, you can search it on the Google Analytics Help Center. There are a lot of options. They are a pretty advanced feature. I have a full video just on regular expressions. But a common operator is the OR. So to put that, you have to put a pipe, so vertical bar. It really depends on your keyboard layout, how you create this, but in my keyboard I have to press Shift and the key next to enter. On your keyboard it might be somewhere else. And let's say I put here Baidu and apply, and in this case I'm going to see in the report all of the sources and mediums that come either from Google or from Baidu. You can do some pretty advanced things with regular expressions, and I use regular expressions a lot when I'm creating filters. For example, you can create ranges of numbers or specific combinations of letters, as you saw, and or operators. So I encourage you to look at my regular expression videos or to read some articles online on regular expressions. They're an advanced feature, but a very powerful feature that, especially when you want to get into advanced reporting and really making your workflow easier, you really want to know how to use regular expression and take advantage of them. And the last report here is referrals. So these are basically the top websites that are sending traffic to your website. Then you have the Google Ads reports. And to have access to these reports, you have to link Google Analytics to Google Ads. The way you do that is under admin. I'm gonna quickly switch back to my example account, sorry. Under Google Ads linking, you have to select the Google Ads account connected to your account. In this case, I don't have on this email address any Google Ads account, but if I had, I could press continue, I could select the account and link them together. And you have to do this to properly see the reports. I have a video on the channel specifically talking about only Google Analytics and Google Ads, and that shows the linking process much better and goes into much more details about this. So see here I have the campaign ID, campaign name and campaign ID. So this is how the campaign is called in Google Ads, and this is a unique ID each campaign has. This is useful if you want to do some manipulation of the campaigns via the API. You'll need this campaign ID. Then all of this data is pulled from Google Analytics, from Google Ads, or AdWords as it used to be called. So how many clicks each campaign got, what was the cost of that campaign, the cost per click, how many users it brought to the site, how many sessions, and then some data from Google Analytics, in this case the behavior, the bounce rate and page sessions, and by default e-commerce. The one thing that is super important and comes up a lot is the discrepancies between Google Analytics and Google Ads. So here you see this campaign, for example, it had 128 clicks, but only 54 sessions. and even in total you see you have a lot, about 100 sessions less. And this is very common. In all my life, I never saw any Google Analytics account that reports the same number of sessions and the same number of clicks. And this is because of a few reasons. But what it's important to know is that clicks and sessions are not the same thing. So when I search for something on Google and I click on an ad, that click gets measured no matter what. It always gets measured. Whereas for Google Analytics to measure a session, the website has to be able to load the Google Analytics code. So for example, I click on an ad and maybe the website is slow, and before it gets a chance to load, I already leave the website. In that case, Google Analytics is not going to measure that session, but Google Ads is still going to measure that session. Another common issue, and you should test this out on your website, is when you use Google Ads and you link it to Google Analytics, by default it turns something on which is called automatic URL tagging, which basically adds a parameter at the end of every URL used in Google Ads. So let's say I advertised example.com as that's my destination URL for my Google Ads. It's automatically gonna add to it $gclid, so that's short for Google Click ID, equals, and then it's a random sequence of numbers and letters. But basically every click that happens on a URL on an ad in Google Ads gets something like this, and that's unique for each one. And when you load the website, sometimes because of your server configuration, this part of the gclid might get dropped, or it might get altered. For example, it might have a capital letter, but then your website rewrites the URL all the times to lower letters. So this is a test that you need to do, inputting a random sequence, and if the random sequence is the same after you load the page, then everything is fine. But if something has changed, you have to talk to your web administrators to see what's the problem. Many times there's a file on your server, which is called HTTP access, and that's where you can make these URL rewrite rules. For example, to drop parameters, or to keep parameters, or to rewrite parameters to lowercase, uppercase, and that's where the change needs to be made. It's somewhat of a technical topic, and if you don't know exactly what you're doing, you might screw up how your website works. So best, if you don't feel comfortable, don't edit that file by yourself, and instead ask your web administrator or someone that knows how to do it to change it for you. Or if you really want to do it yourself, when you open the file, copy everything in it and save it somewhere on your computer, make a change, and if it crashes your site or something, then just delete everything and copy back the original file from your computer, and everything should be back to normal. But I recommend just asking someone that knows what they are doing to make the changes for you. And then you can go menu by menu and see pretty much everything you can see in the Google Ads interface. I generally don't look at these reports that much because most of the times I look at them in Google Ads. What I want to look at is maybe this overlay with the Behaviour tab and the Conversion tab. But you can also look here at the site links. So site links is a feature in Google Ads. I have a video about it as well, and I talk about it in my Google Ads video as well. So these are additional things that you can configure in your Google Ads, and you can see here how many clicks you got for each of them. Bid adjustments in another feature of Google Ads, when you can sometimes bid more either for specific devices or specific locations, and here you can see all of them. Here you only see lines, which means there's no bid adjustments added, but if there would be any, you'd see the percentages appear in this column. Then the keywords, and this is important here. The keywords are actually the keywords that you have in your Google Analytics account that triggered that ad to appear. And these are some of the keywords. And then the other report is the search query. This is actually what people typed in Google. And this is important, and I go into it a lot in my Google Ads videos. In Google Ads, you have multiple keyword matching types, But for example, let's say you have a broad keyword that is hats. When someone searches for red hats, your ad is eligible to appear. So if you would be looking in this case under the keyword report, you would just see hats here. But after you go to the search query report, you're going to see red hats as the thing that people actually searched for. Hour of the day is when people, basically the hour when people visit your website. Again, this is going to be based on your Google Analytics reporting time zone. And you can use this information in Google Ads. You can actually set the times at which you want your ads to run. So either all day, or maybe you don't want them to run between specific hours. So you can configure that by looking here. Maybe you see that, at night there's very little traffic and I don't want to show my ads at all. A better way to do it is not to look by traffic, but to actually look by revenue. So let's see, maybe we have some, you see you have some hours like no revenue. You might think, okay, maybe I'm just gonna turn the advertising off for these hours. You see, it's interesting because before, between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. we got revenue. But if you look at the users, this was the time when we had the fewest users. So if you just looked at this report, you might think, okay, yeah, I can actually turn the ads off for this time slot, but actually that's when the revenue happened. Or another thing that you can do, you can actually in Google Ads set bid adjustments based on the hour of the day. So you might set some bid adjustments. Maybe, a lot of people visit your site early in the morning when they get to work, or maybe in the early afternoon when they get back home. You maybe want to be more present. Or maybe, let's say your business is food delivery, and people start browsing your site starting at 10:30 in the morning to pre-order for lunch, and maybe you want to add some bid adjustment for that time to capture that lunch traffic. Final URLs, it's another feature in Google Ads. So basically in the URL you can display one, in the ad you can display one URL like example.com, but actually the ad takes people to example.com/shop, and here you'd see that. Display targeting is for if you have display campaigns on Google Ads. So display campaigns are the campaigns that you see appear when you visit other websites. Those banner on websites, those are called display campaigns. And if you have any of them, you can see them here. The thing is, you have multiple targeting options in the display campaigns. One of them is keywords. You see here I have nothing. Another one is manage placements, and here is when I want select my ads to appear on specific websites. Another one is topics, and this is the topic of the website. So let's say I want my ads to appear on all websites that are about computers, and if I do that, this is where I would see it. Another one is interest and remarketing, and remember that interest reports I showed you earlier. If I configure any of those, this is where I would get them, or I can do targeting just by age and gender. But in this case, you see there's no active display campaigns running. Then video campaigns are the campaigns that appear on YouTube. So, those videos before a video or in the middle of a video, those are video campaigns. None of them are created here. And then the last one are shopping campaigns. Shopping campaigns in Google Ads are not available in all countries. They're available in most of the bigger countries. So, sometimes you search for something on Google and you see at top of Google a lot of like vertical placements that show you a picture of the item, a price, and where to buy from. Those are the shopping campaigns. Then you can create shopping campaigns for e-commerce websites, and again, only in specific countries, not in all countries. And if you would have them created, you'll see them here. Then the next set of reports is related to Search Console, and here I don't have it linked. Basically, the Search Console, it's what used to be called Webmaster Tools, and it's a piece of code. It's a free account from Google. It gives you a piece of code or a file that you have to put on your website, and then it measures the organic traffic that comes from the Google search engines. And it's a very powerful tool. I have full videos on it and full trainings on it. It also shows you there if you have any kind of penalty from Google. For example, maybe in the past you did some bad SEO practices and maybe Google gave you a penalty for it. You would be able to see it there. and then you could make changes to the website and resend your website to Google to have it reevaluated. You can see exactly how many pages from your website are indexed in Google and so on. But then the reports, you don't have to see them to actually understand what they are. Landing pages, obviously, where people land on your website for organic traffic, the countries they come from, the devices, and then queries. Most of them is going to be not set because of some privacy thing in Google, but sometimes you get some queries. You're going to get more queries in the actual search engine console. Then under social, there's the traffic that Google determines it came from social traffic. So see, in this case, in total, we had 63,000 sessions on the website, and Google detected automatically that about 2,000 of those are coming from social networks. And the top one being YouTube, that sent the most traffic. It would be a good idea to use the campaign URL builder every time you post a link on social networks, just to make it more sure that people are actually coming. So for example, here I'll put like Facebook and social, and I would use this URL for every social post that I make. Then the network referrals is a breakdown of the top social networks. You can add secondary dimension here. So let's say landing page, and you can see each social network exactly where it sends the most people to. You have a landing page report as well to see which ones are the most common pages referred in social networks. If you're really managing your social networks very well and you're posting a lot by yourself, this should not be a surprise what's happening here. But in some cases, maybe other people are posting on social networks links to your website, and then there will be links here that are new for you. Then a conversion report, how many actual conversions happened from each social network. And one of the things to keep in mind about all of these social reports is that they're not very accurate. And I mean that in terms of mobile devices, because on mobile devices you use the YouTube app, you use the Facebook app, the Twitter app. Google Analytics is not able to measure that traffic very well, and most of what you see in these reports is actually social network traffic that is coming to your website on desktop or laptop devices. Then on plugins, if you have on your website these plugins to share to Facebook, share to Twitter, you can actually configure those buttons and track them here, and then you can see how many shares you're getting for your content on each of the different networks, and that's a very useful feature to have. It can really help you understand what type of articles are driving engagement on your website. You can see what things people are most likely to share, and then you can use that information to create more of that type of content so that you attract more users. And then the last one would be a user flow, but since we don't have a lot of traffic here, it's not going to get that much information. But you see, like the traffic from YouTube mostly landed on this page, some of it landed on home, and then where they went from each page. And the last one is under campaigns. So here, if I use this type of URLs with campaign builder, whatever I put here under the campaign name, this is what I'm going to see here. Under all campaigns, I'm going to get a list of them. It's also going to bring all of the ones that are under Google Ads if I have Google Ads linked to Google Analytics. Here I'm going to see all the paid keywords as well, because it's bringing them from Google Ads. In the campaign URL builder, let's say this would be an ad that I put on the Bing search engine. I can actually configure here for each keyword. I can configure the keyword, and then it would be identified here. Under organic keywords, I get what's coming from the Google Search Console, but as I said, most of it is going to be not provided. And also cost analysis. By default is only going to be the one that it's coming from Google Ads, because that's the only one it has any cost data about. But There is an advanced feature that I'm not going to discuss in this video, which is called data import, where you can actually import cost data for other sources. Then we have the behavior reports of what people are doing on the website. The overview gives us some top-level information. The behavior flow, it's one of those flow reports. Again, I'm not going to go into it. But then the site content, it's interesting. So we have the all pages report, and this is a report I look at a lot, which shows which are the most popular pages on your website. And generally, no surprise, the home page is going to be the most popular on most pages. Generally, you only see a slash, not slash home. It depends how your website displays, or maybe sometimes it displays it at slash index.php, but that's still your home page. You can actually, maybe this doesn't tell you a lot, the URL exactly what it is, so you can actually go to the page title. So this is the title you configure in your HTML tag. This is also very important for SEO, so make sure you have good titles. And here I can see in the second, and my homepage has a very short title. I probably want to add a longer title than that. Generally, a good SEO title is up to 60 characters long, and like being there in the around 50 characters range is a good practice to keep in mind, because you can add more description and make it more visible to search engines. And also people, when they see it in search engines, the title is the very first thing that appears. So if I go back to, if I search here, for example, on Google, this line is the title tag. So I want this to be 50-ish characters long, so that people know what they're clicking on. And a well-written title and a well-written description really help with click-through rate in organic search. And then page views, how much time on site. Entrances is how many times this was the first page it was visited, and exit percent, how many people left the site from this page. So you see from the online store, 60% of people left from the store page, which is a lot, because that's the first page of the store. So people didn't really go in to see products. So that is worrying for me in this case. And I would want to have a look at that page and see how I can improve it to convince people to explore the products a bit more. Content drill down is a grouping that Google does automatically. So it looks at the top level URLs and groups the content like that. You can also actually configure it yourself in the code. You can add additional code on the website to say that this falls into that content, this falls into that content. And I really recommend you to do that if your main focus is a blog that, let's say, covers different topics. Let's say maybe you have a technology review blog and you have a section of reviewing smartphones, another section of reviewing laptops. You could do that directly in your code to add, hey, all of these pages are about mobile devices, or if these are about laptops. So you can see a proper content drill down here. And another way of configuring the content drill down, you can actually do it in the settings of Google Analytics by the URL. And you can, if you have a good URL structure on the website, that can be pretty easy to do. If you have a strange URL structure, that can be pretty hard to do. Landing pages are the pages where people first come to the website on. And generally here, the most common ones are going to be the home page, and then whatever pages you're using in your advertising. And then the exit pages are pages where people leave your website mostly from. And here I'm not very happy that they're leaving from store. I'm not very happy that they're leaving from this second page, because this is a page that people are coming to from advertising. The site speed are a set of reports that measure how fast the site loads for users, and this only takes a subset of users into account, so it's not measured for all users of your website, but just for a subset. And in this case, you see over the last month, only 2,000 pages were measured for site speed, and on average it takes almost 5 seconds for the page to load, which is a lot. Ideally, you would want all the pages on your website to load under 3 seconds. The faster the better. And then it gives you here some things like how many times redirection took, how many times lookup took. You can discuss all of these with your website administrator. They're gonna know how to improve it from a technical perspective. You also have the page timings, which gives you a breakdown for the main pages on your website. And you can see in this case that the store HTML quick view is fairly slow compared to other pages. So you can use this report to go page by page and start working first on the ones that have a lot of visits but also load slow and make them work better. You also have a technical report here, and also the DOM timings. And then you have speed suggestions, and here Google is gonna give you some recommendations. You can also, Google also has a separate website and a separate service that gives a lot of recommendations around speed suggestions and improving websites to making them more user-friendly and more mobile optimized. So see, for this page I have 8 suggestions, here 9, 7. Most of the time they're the same suggestions over and over again. But if I would click on it, it would open up this website. It analyzes the page and then it gives me a bunch of suggestions. I'm not going to go into them right now. And here you also have a user's timings report. But I don't have any user timing samples being sent during this month. Site search. Site search is again one of those things that you need to configure on your website, and you actually do it the exactly same way that I showed you earlier to configure search engines. So I'll go under admin and I'll switch to this example account, and under tracking info you see here you have under tracking code, I think no, sorry, it was actually under the view settings it is. And here you see site search is off. If I'll turn it on, and it asks me again for the query parameter. So let's say I own yahoo.com, and that would not be that bad. Let's say this would be my website and I would want to configure site search on it. I just basically need this query parameter that holds whatever I searched for, and in this case it's P. So if this was my website, I would just put a P here, save, and that's that. I have site search configured. Let me go back to the demo account. And you can use site search to see what people are searching on for the website. Maybe if you're an e-commerce website and you see a lot of people are searching for a specific product, maybe you're going to highlight that product on the homepage. Or maybe if you're a blog that reviews products and a lot of people are searching for a review of a specific product, you want to highlight that somewhere. Or maybe you want to, again, if you're like an e-commerce and you see a lot of people search for a lot of product, a specific product a lot, maybe you want to create an advertising campaign for that product. So there's a lot of ways to use site search. And in this case, it's very rarely used on this website, almost not at all. In the search terms, you're going to see exactly what people typed in. In this case, I'm not sure what a gopher is, but that's the most searched. You can also see exactly on which pages people searched. And this is important because then you can also look at reports to see if when people are searching for specific things, like let's say I go back here to search terms, I can switch to the e-commerce view. And maybe if I see a lot of products being searched, I can also see if people are then buying those products. So that would be a good thing. Then under events, if I have created any kind of events on the websites, and as I mentioned earlier, you can create events for anything that the user does on the website, like people clicking on buttons or playing a video, downloading a file, signing up for an event. If I have any of them created, they show up here. And so in this case, on this website, there are 73,000 events happened in total in this time period. If you remember, we had around 60,000 sessions in this time period, so on average more than one event per session. But see, only 13,000 sessions had events, and the events per session is 5 point something. And then under the top events, you see the events that happen most often. So in this case, they're enhanced e-commerce events and also contact us. So that's the category, but I can also look by the action. So product clicks, adds to carts, so on. Then under the pages, I can see exactly on which page these events happened. And under the event flow, I can see one of those event navigation flows and how people went through the website. Under publisher, you only get data here if you have Google AdSense on your website. So AdSense, if you have a website like a blog, for example, and you put ads on it, Google gives you a way to earn money. And you would see here some data that is being bought from Google AdSense. Unfortunately, I don't have any website with AdSense currently running on it to show you these reports. And under experiments, this is a feature that is no longer supported. It used to be a way to create A/B tests for your website. So for example, you had the web page and you changed maybe the color of a button or the positioning of a button or the text on it, and you wanted to see if with the change it performs better than the old one. Then you could create a test, an A/B test. It's no longer supported in Google Analytics. They created a new product for it called Google Optimize. It's also a free product, and I have a full video on it, and it's a really great product to really optimize your website and get the best results out of it. And the last set of these reports, but not the lists, this is actually the report where I spent most of my time on in Google Analytics, are the conversion reports. First are the goal reports. I think now it's a good time for us to talk about goals. So let me go to admin a bit and show you how you actually create the goal. So if I go here under goals, you see currently I don't have any. It tells me that the limit is 20 goals per view. So sometimes you might run into that limit, and the workaround for it is just create another view and create other goals in that new view. But most of the times 20 is enough. So I go with new goal, and it gives me some template options. I actually never used any of these. I just go to custom, continue, and here it gives me 5 options. Smart goals are some goals that Google creates automatically based on the visits to your website. In this case, this being an account I just created, I don't have any data in it for the smart goals. But if you have a website that has some data, Google is going to create those based on some smart information similar to how the smart lists are being created and so on. But here, except for the smart goals, I have the, let's say, old school goals. The event is you create it based on an event, and let me quickly show you how. I'm gonna give it a name. Obviously, don't call your goals like this. Always give them a meaningful name. Press continue, and it's mandatory to fill in the category and action. And let's say I have an event as it's mandatory to fill in at least one of these. So let's say I have one example goal that has category of test and action of test. If I would create it like this, then this goal would automatically be tracking this event. You also have an option that I really like, which is verify this goal, and you can press it and see if you actually defined it correctly. In my case, it's 0%, of course, because I don't have any event with these characteristics. But if I would expect to see some numbers here. Events goals are pretty common to use and configure, and I have a video that is just very in-depth about goals and creating goals, and you can see more there. Another type of goal which I don't create that much is how number of pages people visit, and this is very simple to understand. you have a goal when someone visited, for example, more than 3 pages on your website. Maybe that's important for you to know. I like to do this for blogs. I like to see when I have sessions that people see more than 3 pages in one session. I'm interested to see that. Duration is people spending more than a specific time on your website. And here, remember that limitation I said about earlier, about how Google Analytics calculates time. So as a timestamp difference between the last page view and the first one. So if someone lands on a really good blog article and spends half an hour reading it but doesn't do anything else on the site, that's going to be 0-second visit in Google Analytics. So that could be a bit misleading. So just keep that in mind when using this. And then the last but the most important one is destination. So probably 80% of all the goals I create in Google Analytics are destination type of goals. And these goals are people ending up on a specific page on your website. The most common one is after people submit a contact form or land or buy a product, and they generally end up on some sort of thank you page. So let's say I have a thank you pages at /thank you on my website, and this is how I would create the goal. The destination equals to /thank you. And please be careful and read what it says here, that this is what you have to enter. Just the slash and everything that comes after the slash. So if your website is example.com/thank you, so this is the page, and you entered it like this, the goal won't work. And this is the most common issues I see with goals when they are not working, is because people have input them like this. If this is your URL, to measure the goal, you only have to enter /thank you, and that's it. And here you see this is important. This is equals to. If my page is thankyou.html and I just put equals to and I just put /thank you, it's not going to work. In that case, I would have to use begins with, and I'll have thankyou.html. No, sorry, begins with, and then need to track both of them. Or I can use a regular expression. Maybe I have 2 different pages. Maybe I cannot think of a very good example right now, but let's say I have /thank. Maybe I have thank you and thank -u. If I just put regular expression thank, it'll track both of them. But generally equals to is the most common one. Then you can assign a value, and the downside of values in destination type of goals is that you can only have a static option, so it's not good for e-commerce. But luckily, Google Analytics gives us another option for e-commerce. But let's say I have a business that I build websites, and on average, for every 10 times someone contacts me, I sell a website for $1,000. So that would mean $100 is the average for each contact. So I could put here an average of $100. It's not perfect, but it can give me a rough idea. And the last option is funnel. And funnel is interesting. If I have a goal that requires multiple steps for people to take to complete it, I can define it here. So let's say I have an e-commerce store and I want to track how many people reach to the final thank you page. Let's say maybe my first page that they need to go is shop, and that's on page /shop. And then they have to create an account. Let's see, it's account /account. Then they would have to put maybe review order, and let's presume that these are the URLs. And then the next step would be for them to get to the /thank you page, right? What's important is that I don't have to put it here anymore. So if I put it here like this, this is gonna get my goal not to work, because I already put the final step here. So you don't need to include the final step in the funnel anymore. So make sure you leave that out. And then again, you can verify if this goal works or not. For me, it's not gonna do anything because I don't have it created, and I can save it, and that's that. And at some point, maybe you don't want to use a goal anymore. You can just turn it off if you don't want it to track for a while, and maybe you want to turn it back on in the future. Or if you're very sure you're never going to use it again, you can just edit it into something else. Again, I have a full video just dedicated on goals and going really in depth into everything you ever wanted to know about goals. And we're almost done. Going back to conversions, I have e-commerce reports. Actually, let's go back to goals. We have the overview reports where you can see exactly what goals, how many goals have been completed on the website. And by default, it shows you all goals. And you can select from this drop down to actually dig down into each individual goal. You have the goal URL, and you know exactly at what the page that goal is being triggered. So here you see your info, store.html, so these are URLs that are being tracked by goals. The reversed goal path shows you what page people visited before reaching the goal page, and this can be important so you can easily understand how people are navigating through your website. And then the funnel visualization. Remember, I showed you earlier how you define the funnel. This is then how you would see it. So we have a funnel here of people reaching this cart page, and as you can see, a lot of them went somewhere else after. So from 6,000, 5,000 left the flow, and only 1,000 made it to billing and shipping. From here, half of them left, and to payment only 500 of them made it. Most of them exited from payment, so this is pretty worrying actually, and only 114 made it to review the order, and even at the review stage, another 37 of them left, and at the end only 77 people purchased. So I started from 6,000 people visiting the cart page and only 77 purchases. So only 1.23% of people actually went through the whole process of purchasing something. And if you remember, actually in total we had 60,000 people on the website during this month, and you see here that only 0.12% of them. So from 60,000, only 10%, so 6,000 actually made it to the cart, and from 6,000, only 77, so 1% made it to purchase. This is unfortunately the sad reality of e-commerce websites. You have a lot of people that come and they browse the products, and only very few that buy, but still this website performs very bad. On average, 2 to 3% conversion rate is normal. In the goal flow, you have how people, in this case, came from different sources and navigated to reach a specific goal. You can obviously change this from showing its source to showing something else like Medium or a different acquisition channel and so on. And then in this case, I can show you how smart goals look like, because this website has a lot of traffic. So you see, for what Google defines as a smart goal, for this only 33 sessions actually completed from the ones where it gives advanced analytics intelligence. Then the e-commerce reports, and this being an e-commerce website, these are reports that you're going to spend a lot of time in. If your website is not e-commerce, then you don't have any reason to look at these reports. The important thing is that these are not tracked by default. You actually have to do a lot of code installation on your website to get e-commerce running. So if I go back to the developer's website, and I go here under measurement and gtag.js, and you see here I recommend enhanced e-commerce because it gives you some additional reports. You have to do all of this configuration on your website, so you'll probably have to work with your developers, or maybe you are capable of doing it yourself. If you're using something like WordPress or Shopify or any of these, normally you can find plugins that enable all of the enhanced e-commerce functionality, so you don't have to do any kind of manual work, which is great. And let's go through it. So the first report here would be shopping behavior. So out of all of the sessions, only 13% of the sessions had any kind of shopping behavior. So these are people that reached any kind of the shopping page, so either the shop or actual product pages. From these, you see how many only added to cart and only how many started the checkout process, and at the end how many finished it. And you can break down these reports by all kinds of different stuff. So by default is by user type, but you can look at it by country, for example. And see here in India you have a lot of sessions but zero sales. Germany actually has one sale, but it's pretty down the list in terms of visits. So maybe if I could bring in more visits from Germany, I would get more transactions as well. You can also look at it by source medium. So the best one is Google Organic Search. It brings me the most transactions, then direct traffic. Normally on a good website you would see paid advertising pretty high here as well. Then you can dig down into the checkout behavior, and these are basically just the checkout pages where you see how many people that entered the checkout process, how many of them were on billing, how many made it to payment review, and so on. So you see how many people drop down at every stage. And again, you can break it down by a lot of things here. And you can use this information to look at your site and maybe figure out that there are actually some improvements you can make at some places. Maybe you can offer some coupons, maybe here there's a lot of pretty big drop off between the payment screen and review, so a lot of people are exiting at the payment screen. So maybe you're not offering enough payment options. Maybe in your country it's common for people to pay when they receive the product and not with a credit card, and you're not offering that option, and maybe that's a reason why there's a lot of drop off. So you really have to think about many things here. Then the product performance, you're gonna see which products sell the most, how much revenue they bring, how many unique purchases, and all of the different details. Then under sales performance, each transaction that happens on your website gets an ID, and you're going to be able to see for each transaction exactly how much revenue you generated. And if you click in it, you're going to be able to see in each transaction exactly what products people bought, because probably each transaction has more than one product. Like you see, this one has 12 different products in it. Product list performance, you can create product lists for different product groupings, so basically kind of like a product category. And then under marketing, you can create like internal promotions. So for example, a banner on your homepage that sends traffic to a specific part of the website. You can have like order coupons. So if you're sending out coupons on email, you can see how many of them were used here and exactly which coupon, and then you can see, if that coupon campaign was effective for you or not. Maybe you give special coupons just to some products, and you can see that here. And if you run any kind of affiliate program and you give coupons to your affiliates, you can see which one of them were being used here. And then last but not least, the multi-channel funnel reports. And the multi-channel reports are basically you get an understanding of how many times people needed to come to your websites and from what channel to complete a specific action. So either a goal or an e-commerce transaction. It's actually pretty rare that people just come to the website and they buy something the first time without ever having visited the website again. And you can see that pretty clearly here under top conversion paths. You can see that most of the conversion is someone came from organic search, then they left the site, and then they typed in the URL directly, or they came from a bookmark and they purchased something. These people here came 2 times from direct search, and sometimes you can actually see like really long paths that people come from, like 20 plus paths between someone makes a purchase. You can actually look at them from here. So because there are very few transactions, I'm also going to look at the goals, but from here, from path length, let's only look at people that needed to come to the website at least 10 times until they did something. And look at this person here, came from direct traffic once, 2 times from referral, another 8 times from direct, and another 8 times from referral until they did something. And then you have time lag, so how much time before they came the first time until they did something. And you see here, like for 29 of the conversions, it took 11 days from the time that people came first to the site until they did something. And this is very dependent on the type of product that your site has. For example, if you're selling something very expensive that has long purchase decision cycles, it's going to be normal to see like really long time lag. But maybe if you're selling some really cheap items, you're probably going to see very short time lag. It really depends from business to business. Then under the path length, it's going to give you, so you see like 60% of conversions actually happen in just one touch, but this is all conversions. Let's just look at e-commerce, even though we have very few transactions. Still, about 70% of all conversions came in the first one, but you see much less of the value, only 62%. A lot of value, so people that came at least 3 times to the website, they actually had more substantial orders, so they bought either more expensive products or more products in the same order. And then the last one is the model comparison tool, and the model comparison tool allows you to look at different attribution modeling. So with attribution modeling, you're trying to figure out how much each channel contributed to a purchase. So by default, Google Analytics measures something which is called last interaction. So that would be the last known source. And you see here the direct is many times the last interaction, many times the last channel. But I could compare it, for example, with the first interaction, and this is when the channel that people come to the website first time from. And generally what you see here is that display gets a lot more credit. It's actually strange that in this website it gets less value. And also referral gets a lot more value here. So people are hearing about my website from other websites and then they're returning to it. I have a video just discussing attribution multi-channel funnels, and you can really go in depth there. So this was the basic introduction to Google Analytics. I hope you found it useful. I have a lot of other videos on the channel discussing much more in depth about each of the topics here. So going really in depth in multi-channel funnels and attribution, or really in depth into goals and so on. So I highly recommend that you check those one out as well. Thank you for watching and have a good day.